Very much for a nice theoretical introduction. So we can move from theory to practice now. And I think I should explain why Estonia, why Estonian example. I think our past ties us together. So decades and decades common history that has been relevant. And as we heard many quotations from literature or writers today, I would like to start with motto of Estonian nation for a long decades, which comes from our writer Anton Hansen Tammsaare. And he said that work hard and love will follow. And that's the quote what a father says to a son. And I had to read a book to actually discover that the son has a reply to the father. And son says that, "Father, listen, mother worked hard, died, but love never followed." So I would like to think that within those 25 years when we were independent and maybe walked in another path a little from Belarus, I would like to believe that our motto has changed from work hard and love will follow to love hard and work will follow. So, why Estonia? Some facts. I mean, we are a tiny country up north. Richard said something about PISA results. I will talk about it later. But there are some things you should pay attention to. Our minority of Russians or Russian-speaking, which is pretty big. We are fortunate of having low unemployment rate, and GDP per capita is not that big, but you can do something, and I will explain later what exactly. And average monthly salary is 1,300 euros, which is not as good as our Western EU partners, but still something. The role of education has been in focus for a long time. And I think this motto from our last president, that education is the most important thing the nation can give to students or to youth, is what the story relies upon. So it's not important to give the children a land or a house or a bank account. It's important to guarantee the quality of education. Some more facts. Actually, that we found ourselves in top of PISA ranking was surprising. If we see the average points we got from PISA over the three measurements done in Estonia, we didn't really change much. And I must say that we are on top because some countries who were on top perform a little worse. But we are top on two reasons. One reason is that the difference in youth who study in Estonian and in Russian has diminished. And also that our youth from low-income families are performing averagely better than in different countries. So the income or the family income doesn't pay that much attention in our schooling system. But yes, we are proud to be third in science, sixth in reading, and ninth in mathematics. But I must say that PISA measures or measurements, they do fit well in our schooling system. The testing as such fits well in our national exam system, so that must be one of the advantages as well. Even though it's great to be on top, we are not overblown by that. So I'm trying to explain what we have done on quality-wise for our educational system and not really flying high on high results. So a little bit more about Estonian as a nation or the additional value of the education we have. So we are not a rich country. We don't really have natural resources or some hidden treasure boxes. So what we have are our educated people. Despite the difference of our southern neighbors, we really don't have immigration. So we have had a minority in our country for a long time, Russian-speaking minority, but with current immigration flows from different countries outside of EU, that hasn't really affected us. So we have to cope ourselves. So we can't rely on cheap labor from neighboring countries or Asian countries. So we have what we have, and we have our people. Again, the thin public administration layer has played a very important role, and I will explain you a bit about later what we did. And efficiency in a schooling system or in financing the schooling system has helped us to do some innovations. We are aware that our GDP or state budget won't grow tremendously in upcoming years, so what we can rely on is to just allocate the funds on different priorities and to free the funds from bureaucracy. That has been the target. And you might have heard we are e-obsessed, so e-services, digitalization, that's our thing. So paperless meetings, e-elections, e-taxes, digital signatures, e-school, e-tests, e-school bag, e-teachers, e-training, that's our thing. So I will skip that, what we do, but organizers asked me to spend some time to explain about the regional reform and tightening the belt of the public administration. So on a peak of economic decline, we had the question, can we afford to have the system of public administration like we had, or do we have to do something? So instead of cutting down the services, we cut down the public administration as such. Of course, the people didn't like it because the salaries went down from 10 to 17%, which was a lot. But also, because we cut the public administration, it allowed us to build up some good e-services. We saved the teachers and academic personnel. So even though we cut down the salaries of the public administration, the salaries of teachers, social workers, police and defense were kept as a priority, and those were the only salaries in a country that actually raised. Zero bureaucracy is kind of an initiative which is very much alive at the moment. It means that establishing the company should be as fast as 5 minutes in Estonia. It relies on a rule that once you have given the state your information, despite is it your personal information, tax information, educational information, the state doesn't have the right to ask it twice. So the state has to be smart and not to trouble you with constant questions. The audit of public services ended up with merging different agencies, and I must say that the educational sector is a good example. The size of the ministry is actually twice as small as the size of my organization. So ministry has 200 people. We have almost 500 people. There are no public agencies under ministry. The whole function of the education is carried out or executed by the foundations, which are based on private law and not slowly governed by the ministry, but a combination of different organizations. So I'm responsible not towards the ministry only, but towards the social sector and towards the other organizations. And the most important thing of the regional reform is actually getting rid of the county level. So this is the picture we had last year. So you see the small parts of it. So we had over 260 counties, small local municipalities, and 15 county governments. And this is the picture starting from next year. So county, I think in Russian times we used the word rayon. This doesn't exist anymore. So one less level of governance. State goes directly to local or regional level, which means that the funds we can save now, we can invest to education. And what has changed, which is important to stress, the new role of local government means that the education will be their sole and most important activity. Before that, it was a county level who acted or was responsible for vocational education, general education, hiring teachers, organizing the everyday educational work, but now it's local governance level. So it means that it comes closer to the citizens. And we'll see how it works, but so far it's the part we can actually save funds and reallocate the funds. And that has been, from the regional perspective, the biggest change. So little about the strategies. There was an interview with the media a couple of weeks beforehand of this conference, and I stressed that we set the goals for our educational reform about 20 years ago. And those goals were set not only by the government, but actually by the president as such. And it's actually very important to agree upon what are your main goals and what is your vision. So if this is fixed, it's easier to do the everyday development. And for us, it was very important that we actually tied the educational sector to serve the socioeconomic well-being of the country. And of course, to take the promise that we allocate more funds from the state budget to the educational sector, the target was set for 10 years to reach the ceiling as 8% from the GDP, but I must say that we actually managed to achieve it this year. So some goals take longer time than expected. But the most important national strategy is not only about the general education, but it's about lifelong learning as such. And the activity to form the strategy started 6 years before it was adopted in 2014. So every agreement or every vision takes longer time usually than expected. And this is the vision we agreed upon. Learning is a lifestyle, and development opportunities are noticed and smart solutions are pursued. So we actually target, as you can see from the vision, we target the individual citizen. So citizen should have every possibility to learn and to develop in accordance with his or her own capacities and needs. And we as a state should help the citizens to understand what are the needs and demands of the citizens so we can support it. So we target the citizens personally. And there are not actually so many aims we agreed upon. So we have 5 main challenges, and those 5 main challenges are met throughout financing programs. First is the changed approach on learning. Again, the changed approach on learning means that learners' individual and social development is in the core. Second is the competent and motivated teachers and school leaders. So we invest a lot of funds on training, retraining, especially on salaries. and on school leadership. Third is the concordance of lifelong learning opportunities with the needs of the labor market. Fourth is the digital education, the focus on digital lifelong learning. And fifth is the equal opportunities and increased participation in lifelong learning. So only 5 aims, and those 5 aims are present throughout the programs we are executing. So the role of education, a little bit what maybe Richard said before. Statistics can show one thing, but everyday activities or what we believe in are actually another thing. So why do we think that education has been our key to future? I think one of the explanations could be that we have quite well-educated nation. So over 40% of people have higher education. So it comes from educated parents as role models. I must stress that the importance of Estonian as a language of the education has paid a lot of success. Russian is a language of education till the end of basic school, so till the end of 9th grade. It has been the language of the education for gymnasium level of vocational education for a long time, but the political change has given us the drift that upper secondary education and vocational education in Estonia now is provided only in Estonian. So liberal and comprehensive approach to education, it's about equality and equity. When Richard said that there are some things that the states should provide for pupils in order them to be more competitive or to perform better, so I can give you some examples what we do on equality, for example. There are free services, so yes, we are the country who actually believes in giving free services instead of money, but free transportation, free lunches, free textbooks, free medical care, free hobby activities. And on the equity side, I would say free study support, which means free career counseling and free study counseling. Study counseling is the help from psychologists, social pedagogic, language therapy, and so on. Individual curriculum plan and why it's important. As Richard said, that there are some countries, or there's a pattern of countries who perform well, but they tend to keep the special needs students in a different schooling or different system. And then there are countries who actually, on PISA-wise, perform less, but they include special needs students in their everyday schooling life. We actually are the second part. There are no special schools for children who have mental or physical disability. I could say that there are only 2, and those are dedicated to children who have severe disability. But everyone else is included in a normal, everyday, the same schooling system in the same class. Of course, it's an advantage for a teacher how to cope with that. But that's our belief, and I think our PISA results show that you can do it if you really want to. We provide extra long-day care for children who don't have the ability to travel home immediately or want to stay at school for a longer time, so it's till the work day of the parents is finishing. And we have state-funded places in boarding schools and free counseling centers all around Estonia. So those services are free. And I think this can be one of the solutions or one of the explanations why our students, pupils who are coming from the low socioeconomic background families are actually performing as high as the ones who come from the wealthier families. And about GDP, how much the GDP is spent on education, as I told a couple of years ago, it was 6.1, and this year, because of the raise of the salary of teachers and headmasters or the schooling personnel, it will jump, hopefully, 3 more points, so about 9. A little bit about preschool. I will stress some things maybe which could stand out as such. So when Richard said that actually preschool attendance of Estonia is 91%, I think the recent statistics show it's a little bit better. It's 96%, but where is this 4%? Estonia is a small country. And we have, and actually dying out nation, aging nation. And the amount or share of young children is a constant concern. Thus, we have very generous social support service for youngsters. So mother or father can stay home for a year and a half, and while actually having the salary paid by the state. So it's a privilege to stay at home for a year and a half and pay full salary from the state. And your job is guaranteed for you, either for a father or a mother for 3 years. So it's a very flexible system. You can take time on and off, go to work, then to spend time with children. So I think that is visible also in statistics that this 4% is missing on a chart. And our preschooling system is based on what actually Brits or UK do, that it's based on national curriculum, and it's treated the same way as basic school or upper secondary school. And the costs from the national budget or from the GDP is 1%. And some of the money is paid by the parents itself, but the amount is not that big. It's average 50 euros per month. So a little about our basic school system. It's a compulsory. We are now actually in a state of raising the age of compulsory education in Estonia to 19. We'll see how we'll manage, but that's the political will. So the school system as such is comprehensive. The child has the right to go to the closest school, so the school doesn't have the right to say, we are not accepting you. So the physical school, which is the closest, it's the school for the child. And as you can see that the function of the basic school is not about good grades or being brilliant and having high performance, but it's about creating an age-appropriate, safe, positive, and developing learning environment. So it's the soft side. And what should this child achieve throughout the basic education? The most important thing is the learning skill, the skill how to learn, and then self-reflection and critical thinking. So good marks or good grades is an addition, but those 3 things have to be the core of the education. And as I told, the basic education is also provided in Russian. So the general upper secondary education. The biggest change has been in recent years that we established state gymnasiums. So instead of having local governments funding for the gymnasiums, the state has taken the initiative to establish state gymnasiums. And why? One thing is the efficiency or cost efficiency. Another thing is the possibility to provide different study disciplines to youngsters. So each state gymnasium has at least 4 different study disciplines to choose upon. And also the statistics show that if the gymnasium is cut off from the basic school, so after 9th grade, the pupil has to choose whether to continue in the gymnasium or in vocational education. So if there's no continuous possibility to just flow through the general education, then the decisions made are more accurate. On a side, I must say that our biggest problem is that still 60% of the youngsters who graduate the 9th grade or the basic education choose to continue in gymnasium level. We would like this share in favor of vocational education to be much smaller, but despite of the fact that we have invested tremendous funds on popularizing the vocational education, youngsters still tend to choose for gymnasium level education. And what's the main idea or main function of the gymnasium level education is, again, the knowledge, skills, and values of the students. And of course, if you follow the path of the vocational education, the upper secondary education is also provided with the skills of vocation chosen. So the most expensive part is the general education as such. 2.5% from GDP is spent on it. And still, despite of the fact that we have state gymnasiums, 85% of the costs are coming directly from the local municipalities, 9% is private, and 6% is from the state. If you have the question, how big is the share of private education in Estonia, that would be less than 4%. So majority or heavily state-funded system. Some maybe interesting parts from the national curriculum. So national curriculum is set on two slots: basic education and secondary education. And I think Estonia is a good example where the rest of the EU is actually going, that despite of the subject-based disciplines, we stress the general competences achieved or should be achieved at the end of every schooling stage. And there are 8 general competencies which are present in every single subject taught at school. So those are the values and the culture, social and civic competences, self-management, learning to learn competences, communication, math, technology and science in whole, digital competences and entrepreneurship competences. State actually intervenes to schooling life 4 times within 12 years. So we don't really have the study outcomes described on each year for a school. For example, there's no study outcomes described what the child should know or do at the end of 2nd grade or 5th grade. The study outcomes are described after 3rd grade, 6th grade, 9th grade, and after gymnasium. So those are the 4 times the state comes to measure if those study outcomes are achieved or not. And we measure by testing, nowadays by e-testing, and this measurement or this testing is never marked, is prohibited to mark this testing. So what we have to do, we as a state, it's a sample-based testing. We give the feedback to students and to teachers and explaining that how far they are, did they meet the study outcomes or they didn't, and if they didn't, what's missing. So just to picture you or give you the idea how it's working, for example, we have subject-based curriculums, mathematics, English, history, and digital competences have to be described in each subject-based curriculum. So, for example, while teaching history, how you can meet the description of digital competences. So, teacher has to do something in order to have this digital competencies taught through the curriculum of history, or music, or physical activity. Same with learning to learn or any other competencies I mentioned before. Teachers, I've been talking about teachers and headmasters many times. So a slide about that. I think the situation is the same like here. We lack teachers, we lack young teachers. Teacher profession is not the first choice when youngsters go to study at university, so we had to do something. And the general scene for teachers at the moment is that the whole responsibility of hiring the teachers is given to the headmasters. There is a teacher professional standards described and adopted, but you can be a teacher while studied a different discipline, and you can start, every one of you can start work as a teacher, because within a year, within the first year at school, we provide additional training, and that gives us the slot or the new open window to have more teachers present at school. So teachers' salaries, as said, those have been the priority for a long time. And when Richard said the teacher's salary should be the average salary at least, our target is that the teacher's salary should be at least average for a person with higher education, so it's a little bit higher than an average salary. And I must say that from within 20 years, the number has tripled. The obligatory or obligation is that the teacher training is carried out on master level, even though we have from the Bologna system 3+1 studies at university level, but teachers must have the master level. And as I said, schools are incredibly autonomous. Teachers can choose their own textbooks, methods, how they teach, what they teach. And headmaster has the most important role at school. He has the freedom to hire, fire, support teachers according to what school needs, but this freedom comes with a tremendous amount of responsibility. So yes, freedom, but it's a very responsible job. And another innovation, which actually was born out of the media attention on how well the schools perform. So the need to eat or consume grades or high performance on testing was actually incredible by the mass media. So on a side, just to give something else than good grades on national exams, we started to assess schools in order what kind of additional value they make. So good grades is a personal achievement of a pupil, and additional value of the school is actually what schools can do in order to enhance or strengthen the performance of the pupil. And to put together those results, the additional value of the school and the grades from national examination gives much more better picture. So, for example, if pupils perform very high on a mark or ranking-wise after national exams, then it doesn't necessarily say that the school has had a high value. So if you have had a slot of very clever students and the school didn't do nothing to make them perform even better, then the additional value of the school would be very low. And this information is actually public. And why it's public? It's because of for the information for the parents, so that they should actually be more demanding towards the school and the headmaster. And what we also do in addition is that we do national well-being analysis of actually kindergartens, basic schools, and upper secondary schools. And national well-being analyses are not public as such. Those results are given to schools' family for them to decide or to analyze what they can do better or where they can perform higher. And to conclude, some challenges we have still, and on the next slide I will give you some challenges as well. I think the attractiveness of the teacher position is a growing concern, despite of the prioritizing the salaries and giving the youngsters and adults different ways how to become a teacher. We still lack of teachers, and this trend is very worrying. So we can raise the salaries, but this is only one way to make this position more attractive. We have had feedback from another OECD research, which is called TALIS, which is pretty much the same like PISA for pupils. It's TALIS for teachers, and unfortunately, despite of the fact that our pupils are performing high, our teachers still think they are not valued enough by the society. So this is something we have to do. So the rearranging of upper secondary education in order to have more youngsters following the path of the vocational education and training, that's our challenge. To support digitalizations and the ICT skills of teachers is an advantage still. And from the ranking, from grades to actually additional value schools create. So our ideal world would be that the student can actually graduate without even being marked from the scale of 0 to 5. So that would be our vision. And financing of education, so more private or more needs-based approach, in that sense that if the student needs additional support in a classroom, it needs additional teacher, it needs additional tutoring hours, we should provide it. So that's the goal. And what can we recommend on this big challenge we have had ahead of us? I think the first thing you would hear about us again would be in cooperation with UNICEF, because in 21st November we will start our first mission to Belarus, as we have done with several neighboring countries beforehand. So I think that would be the opportunity to learn from us. I can say that we can't teach you. You can learn from us, but we can't teach you. So I think this would be a tremendous opportunity. And what can I say? We have been the big eyes of the EU for 25 years. And I can say that learn, but don't adapt immediately. So gather as much information as possible, but make as little changes immediately as possible. Think of it. Second important thing is that be research-based. If you don't have the educational research present in Belarus, then invest in it. You need evidence in order to change something, and we have actually gained a lot in financing or investing in education science as such in Estonia. And you need your own researchers. All the research done by others like OECD or World Bank or IMF is good, but you need your own vision as well. And for example, we have changed our curriculum for general education 3 times within 25 years, and we have to say it's actually too much, because every change in education takes a long time before you start it and before you start to have the first results. And education cycle is at least 3 years, so be careful. Before you change and before you agree upon a change, do think of the indicators, how you will measure this change. And since happiness and good life was strengthened yesterday and today, I would like to say that the good cooperation is actually like a good marriage. People get married because of the common interest, but they tend to get divorced because of the clash in values. So be certain what are your values before you get married. So thank you.